This episode is brought to you by Springbrook Autism Behavioral Health. Springbrook provides comprehensive, evidence-based care for children and adolescents with autism and other developmental disabilities. With residential services, educational programming, and clinical support all in one place, Springbrook focuses on helping each individual build skills, increase independence, and reach their full potential. To learn more about their program and how they're supporting families every day, visit their website at springbrookbehavioral.com. Hey everyone, and welcome back to All Abilities No Filter, the podcast where we have real, unfiltered conversations about autism, disabilities, advocacy, education, and the people making a difference every single day. Today's episode is one of the most eye-opening, relatable, and honest, fun conversations we've had around the table. We're joined by Dr. Kristen Williamson, a licensed professional counselor, behavioral health expert, advocate, and someone who proudly describes herself as neuro-spicy. And trust me, after this episode, you're probably going to start using that word too. Dr. Williamson shares her personal journey of being diagnosed with autism and ADHD later in life and what it felt like growing up trying to fit into a world that never quite made sense, and how finally getting answers completely changed the way she understood herself. We also dive into workplace accommodations, parenting neurodivergent children, masking behaviors, advocacy, sensory struggles, and why simply asking someone what they need can completely change their life. This episode is honest, hilarious, emotional, and packed with practical insight for parents, educators, employers, neurodivergent individuals, and honestly anybody wanting to better understand the neurodivergent experience. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into the unfiltered conversation with Dr. Kristen Williamson. Well, Kristen, if you wouldn't mind just kind of letting our listeners know a little bit about yourself, what your background is, and what kind of brings you on the show today.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. This is just advocacy is my favorite thing to do these days. My name is Dr. Kristen Williamson. I am a licensed professional counselor, but I have my doctorate in behavioral health management. My niche for the past 5-6 years has really morphed into working with neurospicy individuals. I love saying neurospicy because I wholeheartedly believe the neurodivergent world. We are the spice of life, whether it is a potent spice or not. We have the spice of life. Plus it just kind of takes away the stigma a little bit in my mind. And so just if you hear me say neurospicy, that's just, I love spicy brains. I started getting into the world of advocacy because I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD when I was just about 40. So I got to live an entire life before being diagnosed. And now at the diagnosis, I could just get to rewrite my history.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so incredibly passionate about helping others to understand their brain and rewrite the trauma from the upbringing.
Absolutely. I love neurospicy. Like I said, I was preparing for the episode. I saw that, and that is one of the coolest ways I've ever heard someone put it. It makes it just, like you said, it just alleviates some of the stigma that we always hear about when we're speaking about anything neurodivergent. So I commend you on that. I think the neurospicy is it's just awesome. But I know, like what you just said, you were diagnosed fairly late in life. So if you wouldn't mind kind of letting the listeners know kind of like when you finally got that diagnosis later in life, how did that kind of just change your way of thinking, or even when you compare it to prior life before you received the diagnosis? Because I know that had to be pretty tough when I've spoken to people that are on the same path and they really felt out of place, where they just didn't quite fit in the world of this crazy world puzzle and things like that. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of speaking on that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, it's such a favorite topic of mine. I went through this entire probably 5-year path of learning about myself. As a fellow therapist one day when I was talking to him, he's like, I'm pretty certain you're autistic. And I was like, haha, I've got kids who are autistic. I'm not. I don't match the criteria. And he kind of paused and he was like, for women, it's different. And I'm like, hold up, excuse me? What? And it hit me like a truck in the beginning. Like I was so heels dug in. That's not me. I've got 2 masters. I'm working on my doctorate. Like I've got a family and kids and a job and And he was like, that's cute. Let's go to learn about this. And that did turn into a huge hyperfixation, which has just become my life. And so for about 4 to 5 years, I was really undiagnosed, or like as close to diagnosed as I could get without having the official diagnosis. I was learning about sensory issues. I was learning about overwhelm or shutdown and how that looks different from just being in a foul mood, and ways to come and recuperate and to work with like the spoon theory and just identify where I am at. And so for a long time, I didn't have a diagnosis, but I knew my brain was special.
Mm-hmm.
And I really leaned into that I'm allowed to wear sunglasses in a crowd of people because I'm getting really overwhelmed. I'm allowed to wear earplugs. Like I don't need to have a diagnosis to do this.
Right.
And then finally, I had the money to go in for testing because as an adult, autism testing is not cheap. Insurance is like, it's not necessary, quote unquote. If you've made it this far in life, there's not a medication that can make you less autistic. So they're going to charge exorbitant fees. Insurance isn't going to cover it.
Right.
But I worked in the field. I really wanted to know about myself. And so going and doing the assessments and talking with the individual and just having that piece of paper that's like, oh yeah, she is level 1 on the spectrum, ADHD. It almost felt like I got to let go of a breath that I didn't know I was holding,
Mm-hmm.
because it validated everything I had been searching with.
Sure.
Or searching for,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding about myself.
Absolutely.
Different, because I could tell my friends and family, half the people were like, well, yeah, didn't you know you were autistic? And the other half said, no, you're not. I'm like, so you have the people who just accept and the people who absolutely will not believe you no matter any documentation you have.
Right. It's because I've spoken to people that kind of are on the same train as you, and it must be so difficult, like I said, growing up, feeling like you're not fitting in this puzzle that the whole society expects you to fit in, and you're thinking, oh, it just must be my personality that just people just can't get along with. And you kind of, people always just feel like there's something wrong with you. Like I'm doing something wrong because everybody else is fitting in, but I'm not fitting in. But then you finally get that diagnosis, or like you said, that piece of paper that says, hey, your brain works completely different than 99% of everybody else's. So there is a diagnosis reason for this. But now, until you have the answer, you can't even think about the solutions. You can't even think about all these strategies or accommodations or whatever it is that you need to implement to maybe be able to function a little bit easier or fit in a little bit more, if that's the goal. But I can't imagine going through life without that answer. And then so happy for you that you finally got it, and it seems like you're thriving now, which is amazing. And with your advocacy work is so awesome. Myself, I take a lot of pride in being able to try to help this certain population and to kind of be that voice or help parents out. So when you think of advocacy, I've asked this question to a lot of people I've talked to. What does that mean to you? Like, what does the word advocacy mean as far as when you're either trying to support others or even yourself in different situations?
For me, I take it in a completely different direction than probably most other people. I see it as using my privilege, credentials behind my name, to get on the biggest podium ever and be as loud as possible to let everybody know that they are okay as they are.
Right. Absolutely. What do you think is, I know when, like, I do a lot of advocacy and help with different school settings and IEPs because that's my background and with education. And you know as well as I do, or anybody, what the struggles are when you are trying to support and advocate for individuals. What are some of the biggest roadblocks that you kind of run into, or things that, well, in all honesty, just frustrate you the most when you're trying to support and advocate individuals or even your own children in situations? I mean, just as simple as, but what's your biggest headache? What's the things that just irritate you the most when you're just trying to provide these different supports for people?
The amount of people who don't take into account that spicy brains, that's an invisible,
Mm-hmm.
it's an invisible thing. So coming in and looking for accommodations with an adult, you can wear earplugs, and that the social norms, especially for the American culture, the social norms of like, well, no, wearing earplugs is perceived as rude,
Mm-hmm.
or being camera off in meetings. A lot of companies refuse to have that, or it's if it's not a broken leg, they're not able to see that it is a disability. And with autism, specifically because it comes in varying levels, of daily support needs, everyone's support needs can be different.
Mm.
And so it's not as you meet one autistic person, you meet one autistic person. Others can have different support needs in those times. And so if you have 3 or 4 working within your company, and then they all require different components and just tweak it a little bit, it can be exhausting for the people who aren't necessarily practiced in the field of just advocacy, of looking for accommodations. And so it's coming in and repeating what you are asking for over and over and over, and also empowering, because I work with adults, and so empowering the adults to come in and use their voice and be like, no, this is what I need. I'm allowed to need this. This is an acceptable thing. But telling their brains that yes, they may have felt like a robot wearing human skin their whole life, and that's okay. They might study other people's behaviors. Let them study other people's behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Let them do this. Let them do this. It's frustrating for the people who don't have, frustrating for me, the people who don't have the understanding of what spicy brains are,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can work phenomenally well, but we might need a little bit extra. We might need something different.
Sure.
But it doesn't mean that it's less.
Mm-hmm.
So the long-winded answer of just the lack of education for adults in the working world.
And I'm so glad you can speak on that, because that's not an area that I'm very familiar with, where it's after high school and they're in that workspace. And I'm kind of preparing for the show, I love how much that you kind of focus on and speak about that, how people that are neurospicy can succeed in a workplace, can have the ability to be high performers in any work setting. I would love to hear more on that, just when you are advocating or providing support for that particular scenario. What are the kind of things you go through if either you're working with an employer on how to accommodate, or working with an individual on going into a workplace? What are some advice or strategies that you talk about when in that situation?
We start from the very beginning, the applying for jobs, job interviews, coming in and just, whenever talking to the companies or talking with the companies about their employees, of what accommodations can look like, because as well as I do, at Spicy Brains, it doesn't end at 18.
Mm-hmm.
We grow up and we evolve, and our brains typically don't stop developing until we're in our mid to late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are a solid 7 to 10 years later than neurotypicals with their brain development. And so it's like we're still learning. Our judgment part is still developing. And so it's a lot of the advocacy for the companies, for the client, is just teaching the verbiage of, could you put that in writing? Can you do this? Like, if you don't have that working memory, let's write it down. You can carry a pad of paper around with you. You can send yourself a message. Send this to me in Slack. Do this, do this. And just knowing that they have the ability to ask in different ways. And then also teaching that to the companies of like, okay, well, I'm going to say this auditorily, but I'm also going to send this in a message. If there's a meeting set in place, I'm going to send out the agenda so everyone knows what is coming, so we can reduce that anticipatory anxiety. Mm-hmm. It's allowing the kind of the chairs that you can fidget in or spin in, and know that that doesn't mean that they're not listening to you if they are just spinning and moving and grooving. Or knowing that not everyone has to make eye contact, be listening. That it's not rude if they're not making eye contact with you. This is just how their brain is functioning. Not even just with work. For my 18-year-olds that are going into college, looking at what college looks like, mm-hmm. and how it's very, very different, because you don't have to raise your hand and go to the bathroom. There's a whole lot of freedom. There's a whole lot of freedom that can come, which can be facilitating.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because and I think, because where I work now and where we support where our kids that we work, we try our best to help with some type of transition, whether that's going to a vocational school, whatever it is. And we try to tell the people that are going to be in charge, and this could be with an employer as well, it's okay to ask them what they need. There's so many people are so afraid mm-hmm. to ask them because they think they're going to be offensive, or they are afraid they're not going to be able to provide the support. But it's amazing the relief that I'll see in people's faces. And you probably see this when you're in a job site as well. It's like, if you don't know how to support them or what they need, ask them. They've dealt with it for years. They know what they need. They know what's going to help them. Ask them. And even because, like I said, I work with in the school setting, I'll tell the teachers that I work with, if you have no idea what these kids need or what works best, ask them. No one knows better what they need than they do. And it's amazing how that light just kind of switches when they're like, oh, it's okay to ask them. I don't have to have all the answers all the time. They can provide them to me. And I feel like if employers felt that way too, well, it would just make their life easier, but also open up that dialogue of communication where that person feels like it's okay to ask, not feeling like a burden. Do you deal with that or see that a lot, where people that are neurodivergent or anything, when they go into a workspace, they don't want to feel like a burden by asking for different things that other employees might not ask? I know I've seen that in a classroom. Do you see that in a employment setting sometimes?
I do. I see that. And also I see the step beyond that is going their whole lives not having a diagnosis. They don't know what to ask for. They don't know that they're allowed to ask for things. Even my humans who are not diagnosed, we're allowed to ask for accommodations with or without a diagnosis behind us. If it comes with, hey, can you send me this ahead of time? Mm-hmm. Like, that's simple advocacy for self. With the idea, and I love with kids now that teachers are able to come in and ask, like, what do you need? Because going through this, we are learning more about our brains, and we are being way more accepting and understanding of everything. I have a lot of adults who have just spent their entire life fighting against societal norms and trying so desperately hard to fit in, and that is exhausting. And so it's coming in and meeting them where they're at with the, yeah, I understand you have to be exhausted. You've been wearing a mask for 47 years and you don't want to do it anymore. It's hard to do it. And so a lot of, like, say if companies came in and asked them, like, what do you need? They might just be deer in headlights. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. Typically, I might recommend offering two choices. Like, do you want me to send you the work thing, or do you want to just get it whenever we're in the meeting?
Mhm.
And it gives them a choice, and that way they can pick. And that, you've probably seen this with the PDA, the demand avoidance with kids, that if we just tell them something, they're going to say no here now. Same thing with adults, except maybe they get stuck in the deer in headlights and they're almost buffering. And because they don't know this mode, and it's very hard to move on from there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And
It's just amazing when you give someone that, I don't want to say power, but the ability to communicate their needs. It's just because, even like I said, I've been in workplaces where I
yeah,
feel like I can't talk, I can't explain what I need, and I'm not neurodivergent or neurospicy, as you put it so awesomely. It is, so I couldn't imagine what it feels like when you feel like you're just that one puzzle piece that just won't fit, but you can't explain it because, one, you haven't been diagnosed yourself, so you don't know why. So that amount of frustration and that amount of just worry can probably just be overwhelming, I am sure. And I know you probably went through a lot of that yourself because, again, you were diagnosed very late. How do you kind of use your own
mhm.
experience and that own thing you went through to relate to people you're working with, or using your own experience in life with being diagnosed so late?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. Oh, have you ever seen the movie Men in Black?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. In the beginning of the movie, there is this alien that is wearing the skin suit of a farmer, I believe. And he is doing everything he can to act human. And with the way that he walks, the way that his facial expressions are, they're just like, you look human, but just off enough that other people are like, something's not right. That's something's not right. That's how I tell people I've experienced life, is I am that farmer walking around, like, trying really hard to mimic human behavior because of watching TV shows. I grew up watching Friends, and so I would mimic a lot of how they would walk, how their eyebrows would go, the tone and inflection of their voice, and copying what I would see in TV, less with the words, but more with their body language. And it was it was good, but it wasn't necessarily fitting. There could be a group of people doing the exact same thing, having the same vocal inflections, having the same facial expressions, and they would still know that I am different because I would be off by an eighth
Mhm.
of something. Like, there's just something that's just slightly off,
Mhm.
and I can mimic human 98% of the time. I can do that because I've studied it, I've learned it, I've done all these things, but there's still just something kind of off about how I interact with the world, which is phenomenal now that I know, but before knowing, it was just walking around as that alien pretending to be a human. And it's instilling this to other people, and I will have to interject between alien and robot because some of the people I work with, they don't feel alien, they feel more robotic. And so we interchange it, but it's still the idea that we are not from this world. We are just existing within this world, looking like everybody else.
Yeah. That's such an awesome analogy. I never even that ever even crossed my mind to make that analogy, but that is so appropriate because it is just you're just functioning. You're just kind of just making sure you're going with the flow, or you're just being able to almost give off the appearance that everybody wants to see. And because society has such a
Mhm.
standard of what is normal, what is accepted. And when you feel like you don't fit that norm, I can be that's an itch you can't scratch. And that's got to be so tough. Something I ask a lot of our guests, because I like to get the opinions, autism has become so much more known in society and even pop culture with the Netflix shows that are coming out with Love on the Spectrum, things like that, where it can be looked at two different ways. It can be looked at you're giving a voice to the population, which is amazing, but also sometimes looked at, okay, you're only showing the funny and the cute side of being neurodivergent with those types of things are showing on Netflix and things. What's your opinion on that? I get a lot of mixed reviews. I have certain opinions on it when I watch the certain shows. What's your opinion on the way autism has become almost an element of pop culture?
I think autism has been around in pop culture for quite a bit longer than we are imagining it. I think the first time really autism was showed was in the 80s with Rain Man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, of course, like a high level, needed to be in a group home, we're a savant, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
And then it evolved to, not having a diagnosis like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory or Temperance Brennan from Bones. And we can have a group of people. We're kind of rude. We're really smart, but we're still allowed to have friends. But we're not going to have a label. And moving into shows now, like Love on the Spectrum, where you were able to have that diagnosis be said out loud and kind of normalized, and shows that people still want to be in relationships. People still want love. This is how we can interact with the world. And it's not showing for me what maybe autism kind of level 1 is, like the people kind of like me, where it's still have the job, have the family, have everything, like still look human most of the time, but still struggle. I don't need a whole lot of support
Mm-hmm.
or daily support needs. And so it just kind of would come across as just an everyday human. So I think the shows are showing more of the higher levels of autism because they think that's what autism looks like for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's still showing that level of uneducatedness within Hollywood. And I love that people are being able to be seen because, autism comes in multiple levels, varying degrees. We're an entire spectrum. And so it is giving voices to people who would have been put into special needs categories, or like the friend who was only a side character all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nice that they're able to be front runners in their own life and their shows, but I think it's still missing a good portion of the spicy population.
Yeah.
And it gives me hope though, because we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are normalizing that people are allowed to be spicy. They're allowed to be spicy, and there's not things wrong with them.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we want to be in relationships. We want to have jobs. We don't want to live with our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to do all the things that other people do. Do you just do it kind of weirdly or not weirdly?
Yeah.
But I like that it's no longer showing us as just we're the savants who are just buttholes, just rude, and because it's still that stigma. And now it's I don't think we're truly fully portrayed just yet.
Right. I 100% agree, because they do give a voice to a certain dynamic, but as someone that works with parents and students that deal with more escalated behaviors, very low impulse control, it's not always rainbows and sunshine and everybody having a great time. I've worked with parents that are so burnt out, they call me so emotional and so stressed. And same with the students. It's not always a funny, beautiful picture. And I do feel like they need to focus on that element a little bit, because it shows parents they're not going through it alone. They're not bad parents because their child is acting this way. A lot of people are going through that. I feel like people could benefit from that, because you probably know more than most, raising a, as you put it so great, neurospicy family can be really stressful sometimes. And can you speak on that a little bit too, with raising your family, which you relate to in a way that a lot of parents don't relate to their children, with being neurodivergent? How is that? What is that like?
It's beautiful and awful at the same time. I have a 16-year-old. He was diagnosed at 8 with it was so annoying. In the beginning was ODD and different, like, really heavy diagnoses, which of course now they're like, well, ODD is not necessarily a diagnosis that we give, that's autism. And I'm like, of course it is. Of course it is. But back then, even 8 years ago, like as early as 8 years ago, they were still giving these diagnoses that don't necessarily fit. But so he got diagnosed at 8, and I have a 13-year-old girl. She got diagnosed with ADHD at 12. I still think she's on the spicy spectrum with autism, but of course females present different. So there's a lack of diagnosing ability necessarily if they are just masking really well. So that's, different pathway. But with my boy child, he got diagnosed before 8 with sensory processing disorder. And he was that kiddo in preschool, in kindergarten, who would sit perched on his chair, who would hide under the desk, who would be an elopement risk, and who I ended up being on a first name basis with every one of his teachers and principals and vice principals and counselors, because I was so lucky to be in a school district where they accepted that autism was a thing. Mm-hmm. And they said, let's work together. No, okay, great. And so I've been so incredibly lucky that I had teachers who were willing to listen and say, let's do this. And we would find words. Like, I learned his words for his behavioral issues, where that teachers could say, that's not appropriate, or that's inappropriate. And they could say those magic words, and then he would kind of snap out of it. Yep. But we had to learn those words. And then I had to come in and tell the teachers in the beginning of every school year, these are his words. If he is popping off, you tell him this, and it's like a reset button, because his brain doesn't know he's being inappropriate. You let him know, and then it clicks in with the, okay, this is not okay. And it took me forever to learn that. But within the sensory processing, that at least gave us the ability for occupational therapy. And so we went to an occupational therapy for a pediatric one. And I got to sit in this waiting room with parents of kids of all diagnoses, all everything. And it was the first time I felt seen just as a mom. I was in a place where other kids could be laying on the floor and rolling around, and it was not a big deal. All those parents were like, yep, that's a normal thing. This kiddo is pretending to be a shark. Okay, yep. This kiddo wants to only watch Daniel Tiger on their tablet. Not a big deal. And it was that place where I didn't feel judged. And it was glorious. And it started that support system for me, and that being with other parents that understood, that going into a grocery store, I didn't realize that if my kid was losing his mind, it was because the ceilings were too high. There was a lot of visual stimulation. There was those, the neon lights that just made everything harder. And so he's losing his mind at 3 years old. And I'm over here just feeling like the worst parent in the world, mm-hmm. because I don't know what set him off. I'm like, well, my kiddo just being a butt. I'm clearly raising an entitled, spoiled child. And then no, And so I started with his diagnosis that let me start learning about autism, and he got diagnosed far earlier than I did. Um, and but I learned that I communicate with him better than I do my daughter, who is predominantly like, I think about it as walking. He steps forward with autism, she steps forward with ADHD. And so they present different in how they step forward. And so she's got way more emotions. And I am that alien wearing a skin suit. I don't always understand emotions. That feels very extreme. And so I just kind of sit there and get like the blowback of all these emotions. And I have no idea what to do, but he almost comes with a manual. I know his manual. I know that language. That's cool. Hers is still being deciphered. And with girls, there's a change, like when there's hormonal input, when puberty starts, when we get further in life, when perimenopause, when menopause happens, all of our coping skills that we've utilized are changing, and they no longer work in the way that they did before.
Right.
So as a parent, I'm really helps me understand him more. So I was able to see, actually, one of my favorite stories that he doesn't love me sharing, but he's not going to listen to this podcast. So, he's not going to know that I shared it. But he's been about 14, really, really struggled with washing his hair in the shower. And I've never raised a boy before. So I'm like, boys are gross. They are lazy. They don't want to get like, he is nasty. This is gross. And I went through enough times where I was telling, like, do you need to shower with your shorts on so I can teach you how to wash your hair? Like, I don't know. Have I done something wrong? We were watching YouTube videos. We were doing all these different things. And then one day I had this, I was like, I'm going to get curious. I'm going to get curious and not judgmental. I said, what is it about having your hair wet? And he said, I don't like water touching my face.
Okay.
What? Okay. I can work with that. It's a sensory issue. And we were able to, they have little like visors you can stick to your forehead to have water not touch your face. Like, we were able to come up with different ways to work into getting your hair wet, to work into having a shower. And so once I was able to come in and get curious, I was able to find out the answer.
All right. That's just so cool. Like, it's so amazing where you're exactly right. You just asked, what is it? I remember we had we almost exactly kind of what you were going. We were working with a child and he hated taking a bath. It just didn't want to do it. And we talked to one of our BCBAs that I work with a lot, and he tells this story, everybody all the time. And it really was, he did not have a conversation about the bath with the kid. It was, what do you like? And he found out he loves superheroes. So he just looked at him, okay, do you want to take a bath with Superman or Spider-Man? And he grabbed that Spider-Man figurine and went right to his bath. And it was just really just talking. Let's figure out what you like, what you don't like, what bothers you, what doesn't bother you, and giving him a choice. And he took his mind completely off the bad thing he didn't want to do, and now he got to hold a Spider-Man figurine. So it's so cool how just asking questions will just you typically lead to appropriate solutions when working with these guys. And that's just so cool. It just, because we think we got to have all this training and all this education, and it does help, as both of us know, but being comfortable talking and being comfortable asking what people need will take you so much further. And I think with your advocacy you're doing is so important and so awesome, because you see it from almost every point of view, being neurodivergent yourself, raising a neurodivergent family. I mean, there's hardly a viewpoint you can't see it from. And I think our listeners could benefit from that so much. So if you don't mind, tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can find information that you provide, or just wherever you are out there in the world. I know our listeners would love to know what it is.
I have a website out there. It's EmpowerMindSolutions, LLC.com. It's a very big mouthful, but if you also Google Dr. Williamson, I'll show up in one way, shape, or form. And also, I have a whole bunch of workbooks on Amazon that every time my clients will say something, my brain will say, let's make a workbook for it. And so I have all these different workbooks for learning about spicy brains as an adult, for the people who are in the work world, for people who are just in different areas, because it's still a needed set of information that not everybody has.
Right. Yeah. I love a good workbook. I love an instruction manual. I think that's awesome. And listeners, all this stuff, all the links we just talked about to Kristen's website and everything is going to be on our website as well, allabilitiesnofiltered.com. So if you go there, find the episode, it'll take you straight to all these amazing resources. Well, Kristen, thank you again for sitting down for one of the most fun and awesome conversations. I've learned some amazing new words and ways to describe things that I'm probably going to steal and go use myself with my neurospicy people that I get to work with every day. But it's been such a fun, awesome conversation. And listeners, please, again, go to the website or leave a comment wherever you're listening so we know what you want us to talk about, what conversations you guys want to hear, because that is how we base this whole show off of. But thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we can't wait to get around the table again for our next unfiltered conversation. Thanks, guys.